I'm currently 21 years old, I just graduated university, and I'm doing game development full-time. The game I'm making is called The Outbound Ghost, and it's an adventure RPG inspired by Paper Mario when it comes to its visuals and story structure, and Undertale when it comes to its gameplay. I also just ran a Kickstarter campaign for this game, and it raised $28,000. If that interests you, I've left the game's Steam page link in the description to wishlist and follow. The Outbound Ghost is far from my first game though. If we want to take a look at the journey that it took to get here, we'll have to go all the way back to 2014 when I first experimented with game development. In the summer of 2014, I started experimenting with Unity, a game engine that I had found around when looking up the most common tools to make games. I installed it and I'm not gonna lie, I found it really tough. I made this little unnamed first-person platformer where you go through obstacle courses, and as you see, it doesn't really look great. It was very much an asset flip, but it was a great starting point for me to learn how game development works on a very basic level. After the summer ended, I didn't really continue making games or anything, but I still wanted to continue trying to do that in the future. Then came 2016, and at my school, we had this project that we all had to do relating to something you were interested in or wanted to do in the future. Being someone who was interested in games, I decided to jump into that again, and since I'm Spanish, I gave it an educational spin and ended up making a game that taught you my own language. This time, instead of using Unity, I ended up using Game Maker Studio, and you'll see that for the next 4 years or so, this is the engine that I ended up using. I didn't want to go with Unity at the time because I didn't want to learn any 3D modeling, and I felt that making something sprite-based would be easier. As well, Unity's 2D tools at the time were definitely not what they are now, and Game Maker overall was much more approachable, so that's what ended up sticking. After finishing up this project, I really went ham making games. I have 6 of these games from this era that are still public on my GameJolt page, but I'm pretty sure I made double of that and I just didn't upload some of them. As you can see, these are quite basic. They're like Flappy Bird clones, Pong clones, maybe something a bit more complicated but still not too much. But I learned a ton, so after having honed my skills for these past few months with these games, I decided that it was time to make my first commercial game. And so I thought that a Metroidvania would be the great genre to do this, since it's basically just a platformer with slightly different level design, right? I was definitely wrong. Level design in Metroidvanias takes so much effort, and I definitely didn't expect that. The game I'm talking about is Loot Box Life, and it's a Metroidvania with no combat that focuses on improving your character through movement abilities. So instead of getting new guns or new attacks, you improve through getting better dashes, jumps, bounces, and movement abilities like that. In a way, the world itself is like an enemy, and you beat it through using your movement abilities to traverse it. But before getting into all of that, I actually also did a Kickstarter for Loot Box Life in 2018, although it was much smaller than the one for my current game, The Outbound Ghost. I asked for $200 since it was to cover some extra assets to make the game's visuals better, and honestly I'm surprised it even made that goal. If you check the page, it's really not great at all, and you can compare it to the one I made for The Outbound Ghost, and it's really night and day. I think this really exemplifies something you don't always see in game development, and that's all the work that it takes to get to a certain point. For example, you may see all these people congratulating a studio on the success of their first game, but what you don't see is all of the work that went behind the scenes in terms of, for example, each of those studio members' individual projects, or all the unreleased games they made. But yeah, as you've been seeing here, the look and feel of Loot Box Life was vastly improved in the post-Kickstarter version, and it really paid off to spend the extra time to make the game better, even though it took 2 years. Funnily enough, I started the Kickstarter for Loot Box Life in 2018, and the game itself didn't release until February of 2020. So the project that I started in high school didn't even release until halfway through my university degree. When Loot Box Life came out, I felt super motivated to continue making games because of how much I felt I can do after going through this project for so long. So while I was making Loot Box Life, I made a little prototype for the Outbound Ghost, and as you can see, its style was a pixel art, and it was made in Game Maker Studio, so the game has definitely evolved a lot since then. Anyways, after I finished Loot Box Life in February of 2020, I decided to pursue this project, the Outbound Ghost, further, except make it 3D instead of 2D. To do this, I felt like it was really necessary to learn a 3D engine source instead of doing it all from scratch in Game Maker, so I went back to Unity. So 6 years later, with a couple of years of programming experience, I really picked it up much more quickly. There was some stuff that I really wasn't used to though, since Game Maker is way more stripped down than Unity, for better or for worse. So the Outbound Ghost Unity project was a bit of a mess because of that, and I felt like I really needed a bit of a transition project to ease the pain. And this is where Juror Box comes in. Juror Box is a puzzle game where instead of controlling the player, you rotate the world, and it's a concept that I'm super happy with and definitely want to revisit in the future. If you've played the Outbound Ghost demo on Kickstarter, you may notice that there's actually a cameo for Juror Box in that game, so watch out for that. But yeah, I developed this game over a bit more than a month to hone my Unity skills, and I'm really happy with the results. People seem to really enjoy speedrunning it, and since it has online leaderboards in-game, it's super fun to try to beat other people's times. It also has a golf-like element where there are separate leaderboards for how few moves you use to complete a level. So whether you like racking your brain to find out how you can beat a level with as few inputs as possible, or you like going fast, this game is really cool for that. Juror Box was really a big milestone for me as well, since it was the first game that I released on platforms other than Steam. I partnered up with publishers to release it on both mobile and Switch, so if you want to play it on those platforms, you can do it. And just to put it into perspective, Juror Box released in late August 2020 on Steam, and then it came out on mobile in October, and then in December it came out on Switch. But yeah, after releasing Juror Box, I was really motivated to come back to the Outbound Ghost with a fresh perspective on how the nuts and bolts of Unity work. And so I basically rewrote the whole code for the whole game. When doing this, I also decided to experiment with a more Paper Mario-like art style, since a lot of people online had been saying the 3D pixel version kinda looked like that. I tested it out with my temporary art and I really enjoyed how it turned out. I felt like this style better embodied the themes and inspirations of the game and straight up looked better. So after this cool experiment, I decided to hire a character artist to really consolidate this art style, and that's where Clay Zola comes in. I really think he did a fantastic job with him, and without him the game wouldn't even look close to as good as it does today. So after revamping the game, I decided that I wanted to do a Kickstarter for it, since the idea of developing the game with the community always appealed to me. So I started working on the demo and the Kickstarter page of the game, and it took until July of 2021, so this summer. By the end of the campaign in August, the game raised about $28,000, and that has really helped me not only being able to save full time on this, but also making the game much better in so many ways. One of these includes getting Kimo on the team to do music. He actually did the music for Loot Box Life, so I'm really excited to work with him again, and from what I've heard of this game's soundtrack, it's going to be really a stellar one. Kimo also has his own game that he's working on in Kickstarter, and it's a cyberpunk Metroidvania, so if that interests you, give it a look. Throughout my time working on the Outbound Ghost, I also started doing a lot of freelancing while I was in university, and when I finished back in May, I continued doing that as well. And I'm still doing that to this day to support the core game development that I do for my own games. Other stuff that happened this summer included being a part of E3 through the Wholesome Direct, being in DreamHack, and other stuff that's really cool that I can't just say yet, but it's going to be really awesome. Every year that I spend as a game developer gets more and more eventful, and I really can't wait for what's to come not only for the Outbound Ghost, but for my future games as well. With the Kickstarter funds, the releases of my previous games, and the freelancing that I've been doing, I'm able to run Con Radical games full time, and I'm really excited for the release of the Outbound Ghost because it will not only be awesome for you all to try it out, but it will also allow me to make something even better for my next game, and who knows, maybe even expand the team to be able to do that as well. And yeah, that's where I am today. So thank you so much for sticking until the end of the video. I seriously really appreciate it. And if you want to support me or the game I'm working on, the best way to do that is really just go to the Steam page of the Outbound Ghost and wishlist it and follow it. It really helps. But yeah, I hope you all really enjoyed this week's devlog, and I'll see you all next Friday. Bye.